So my name is Hillary. I was in the Navy for 6 years. I found service to school sort of late in my application cycle, and the ambassador that I got paired with encouraged me to apply to some more competitive selective schools, which was a good idea because I ended up getting into Yale, where I graduated in 2020. Now I work for service to school currently, where I do some stuff on the undergrad side and the law school side, and I'm currently using service to school as I apply to law school. So I'm an employee, veteran user of the program. Our three panelists today, first we'll start with Lauren. So Lauren Manley served in the Army for 4 years as a Signal Corps officer and victim advocate. She is currently pursuing her Ph.D. in social work at Rutgers University and is researching trauma in the context of the body-brain connection. Next, we have Erin. Erin Moffitt is a career national security professional with experience in defense policy and advocacy. Erin earned her BA from Villanova University and then went on to earn her master's in public policy from Duke University. And she currently works as an independent consultant with Joint Special Operations Command. Then we have Cara Sturdevant, served 8 years in the US Navy as a nuclear reactor operator. She completed her service in 2018, where she went on to get her EMT certification and started community college for a nursing program. And she decided to apply to more academically rigorous schools and considered both the Ivies and, I'm not familiar with this acronym, NES. Is that like a sports thing? Or something, I don't know.
NESCAC.
Yeah.
So just like all like the small liberal arts colleges up in the Northeast.
Oh. And then you ultimately chose to transfer to Williams College. Nice. I think all three of you are way more accomplished than me. So hopefully you'll be the experts here and I will just lead the panel. So I want to start with what motivated you all to pursue higher education after the military.
Yeah, I can kick it off because I'm the last one to actually get out of the military. So it's gonna sound really cliche, but I found that coming out of the military, having been put in such a box when in the military, you go to work, you do your job, you go home. I found that I was really wanting to make a bigger change in the world, which is why I did get my EMT certification. Like, I'm so much a people person. And then I was actually going to community college for nursing, just because I was trying to do that change via healthcare. And then I got some advice, they're like, hey, like, why don't you like move up to, a four-year university, see what you can do there and have that bigger impact. So that's really what I was looking for.
I really have a similar reason to you, Cara. In the military, when I was working as a victim advocate, there were so many great people doing great things, but oftentimes we just didn't have the resources necessary to truly help people. So I wanted to pursue trauma therapies. So maybe I could be a part of something that could develop tools to eventually reach back to the military and kind of get outside of that box.
Yeah, I mean, I think very much the same. I had professional goals that I think I realized I wanted to do things when I was in the military. Like, I got very interested in defense policy. And so I knew that if I wanted to make that jump, I was going to have to go to grad school. And also, I tell people a lot, I think when you're leaving the military, it's such a singular and unique experience. And sometimes I think that transition can be a bit jarring to go back to civilian life. So grad school was really, for me, like those 2 years were a really great way to kind of decompress and reprogram. I don't mean that in a negative way, but really, like, I think it made for a kinder, gentler re-immersion back into civilian life for sure.
Since we all come from different schools, what is something about your school that you think is kind of fun or that you think a lot of people would be surprised to know? I can start. I did a secret society at Yale, which I thought was really fun. It was like, I was the oldest person in my society, but they were all regular undergrads. And it wasn't like as secret as you might think, but it was really fun.
I did some digging. I was curious. And according to the VA, there are over 16,000 students enrolled at Duke. And according to the VA, there are currently only 36 students using the GI Bill, which I found shocking. And that means that it's 0.22% of the student body. So not even 1% of students at Duke are on the GI Bill, which blew my mind. I felt like 36 felt really small. And so I think it really underscores the importance of organizations like Service to School, right? Because I think that, we need more vets at Duke. 36 does not seem like enough.
Yeah, I'll echo that for Williams. One thing, and this wasn't what I was going to say about Williams, but the numbers might be a little skewed because although I am attending Williams, they gave me the option. They said, you don't have to use your GI Bill. You can hold on to it for your master's. And they said, we'll cover your undergrad. Just like come here, learn from us, like be a student. So I'm actually in like the fortunate position to not have to use my GI Bill and still getting an undergrad at an amazing college. But one thing that like a lot of people, nobody's ever heard of Williams or like the NESCACs, like Pomona, Amherst, because they're just like these little teeny tiny colleges, and everybody knows of like Harvard, Stanford, Yale, like the big flashy names. But one of the really cool things that Williams does is we have what's called tutorials. So instead of doing a class where you're just in like your normal, typical classroom setting, whichever university you go to, maybe it's 20 people, maybe it's 500. But at Williams, our tutorials are actually only 2 students and 1 professor. So I've taken 2 of those so far, and they're just fascinating because you really get to dig into like what you want to learn. So like the professors will have like a tentative schedule for the first month or so to get you and your partner rolling. But then if you guys get completely sidetracked or like really want to dive deep into one specific thing that you've like learned or has come up, you have like that creative license to really like dig into it. And I think that's something that not a lot of people know about Williams, and it's really appealing.
Wow, that's really cool, both of y'all. I go to Rutgers, which is like a really popular school for veterans. And I wasn't really linked into the vet community at first, but I ended up joining a Tai Chi club just for fun. And like half of the people there were veterans. It's really nice. Anywhere you go, you kind of run into someone with a similar background and you can talk about your experiences. I've really appreciated that aspect.
That's very interesting. And then I think, Carrie, make a good point. A lot of times we talk to veterans and they'll just say like, well, I can't afford that school. It's a private school. The GI Bill caps out at a certain amount. And then we have to sort of get into like the discussion of yellow ribbon, or like some schools, like you said, they'll let you forego your GI Bill and just use their financial aid. So that's definitely like a misconception that we're constantly trying to like bust that myth. So I know we kind of touched on it in the intros, but what did you guys do in the military? And then how do you feel like it prepared you for college?
Yeah, so mine was a pretty direct connection. My experiences as a victim advocate were directly translatable into the world of social work. But I would say, though, one piece of advice I wish I would have gotten was to be willing to move outside of that box of your MOS or what you were doing, and really just be brave enough and believe in yourself enough to pursue whatever field that you really want to go into.
I will echo that 100%. I think, and I'm sure it will come up later, but in the military, like it's the absence of choice, right? Like someone is kind of always telling you what's next, or your choices are very limited. And, I wouldn't, I do national security policy, and I went to grad school for policy, and I'm very glad I did, but, it didn't even occur to me when I was at grad school that perhaps maybe I could just be a policy generalist, or, do domestic policy. Like in my mind, I was like, well, I just spent 10 years on active duty, so I guess I'll do national security policy. And so, yeah, like sometimes I wish, I was like, man, like I wish I maybe had like branched out or done something different. But when I was on active duty, I was a civil affairs officer. And so I think, just we do a lot of network development and just connecting, interagency. And I think that paid huge dividends when I went to grad school, because I really was able to like cultivate a network that I still tap into almost daily.
Yeah, same thing. So I was a nuclear reactor operator, and I think it can obviously serve you well having something that you did in the military that so parallels in the civilian world, because it is scary, it is nervous to get out of the military. Like Erin said, you go from every day, like, you know exactly what you're going to do. Somebody's making all the choices for you. And it is scary to be the one to be like, okay, like I'm going to make the choice now. Like, what do I want to do? What do I want to learn? And it's so wonderful if you're like Lauren and Erin and you have those, you got to work in the military for something that you were so passionate about, that you wanted to do that in the civilian sector. Not all of us are lucky enough to have jobs that do transfer directly, but I think even the soft skills that you learn in the military. So like for me, being a reactor operator, like there is a very high attention to detail, organization, structure, being able to like fit in like all your studying, all your homework is honestly something that probably comes natural to all of you. Yet you would be surprised how many 18-year-olds I sit in class with every day, and they're just like, wait, how do you fit everything in your day? So you definitely like have a leg up on some of your future classmates.
Yeah, I pivoted. I was a journalist in the Navy, and then I did like law focused classes at Yale, but I used some of that Navy stuff when I edit essays for service to school. So a big thing we talk about with veterans is like best fit, because kind of like Cara touched on it, like a lot of people come and they're like, I want to apply to Harvard. And it's like, well, great, but what do you want to major in? And then they say business. And I'm like, well, Harvard doesn't have a business major. So maybe that's not actually the right school for you. It just has like the name that you've heard. So we really harp on like best fit. So I'm curious why you thought the school that you ended up applying to was the best fit for you.
So I also was lured by the Harvard name, by the Yale name, just because nobody's ever heard of Williams, nobody's ever heard of like, and you automatically like rate them lower. You're like, oh, I won't have as many doors open. I won't have the connections, the network that Erin was talking about. That's so crucial to, to just go about your daily life in a job. You do need that network to rely on. So I found that since I don't exactly know what I want to be when I grow up still, that applying to a liberal arts college was something that appealed to me in like my heart, but not in my brain at first. Because again, there is such like a big stigma around going to like one of these like huge name brand schools, that I really had to figure out for myself that like a liberal arts college was like where I needed to be. And like you said, because most people, they do get sucked in, they're like, oh, like you use the example for Yale and business school. And it's like, that's great, but a lot of people just get sidetracked by the name. And I think that definitely happened to me. And I was lucky enough to have service to school and have a couple really close friends to kind of beat that out of me.
Yeah, so I applied to like a bunch of very diverse schools, and once the admissions decisions came in, I looked at financial aid and what programs like had the most resources, and just like general atmosphere and the location. Is it somewhere I can live with things I want to do? Could I like make a life for myself in the area? And that's really what weighed the most heavily for me.
I do admissions for Duke for my graduate school. So I think about this a lot because I am constantly having to answer this question for prospective students when they're thinking about where they want to go. And I will say fit is something I harp on considerably, and not just in terms of major, but also I think sometimes we forget to think about after the, 2, 3, or 4 years that you spend in school, is it, for me, going to Duke, like I have really tapped into my Duke network. Like it was a Duke alumni that gave me my first job out of, graduate school. Like I'm in the process now of kind of like reevaluating, what it is I want to do professionally. And I'm definitely tapping back into my Duke network. And so I think that's really important. And then another thing too is just size. I think is size and location are really important. I went to a really small school for undergrad. I went to a small liberal arts school where, my classes were like as small as 6 kids. And I knew that that was the type of environment that I wanted for graduate school. Like I had looked at a bunch of other policy schools. And Duke's policy school is very small. It's roughly 80 kids per class, which is tiny. Harvard Kennedy School is it's like 800 kids. So I knew that I was more suited for an environment where I could have, I think, a more personalized relationship with my professors. I've had dinner at professors' houses. There are still professors I talk to on a weekly basis. Like that is not, an exaggeration. And so those were all things that are really important to me. And like when I talk to prospective students at Duke, I encourage them to think about things like that.
Yeah, definitely. That's a big one for us. And it's like kind of difficult when you are just planning on getting out of the military, maybe you haven't given it much thought. So we sort of try to prompt people to remember those things. And sometimes I'll bring up like, well, how many veterans do you think you might want to go to school with? Because you could go to Bates College, which has like a literal handful, or you could go to Columbia, which has hundreds, or another big school that has a lot of veterans. And then they're like, oh, I didn't even think of that. So there's just a lot to think about, and fit is definitely something that we talk about a lot at Service to School. So I'm glad to hear that you guys all had like some very specific thoughts and stuff, and you were very careful about choosing your school. I'm always like really excited when we get an applicant who's like, I want to go to this school. I'm excited about this school. I've researched them. I just think that's really exciting. Like it's fun too for them to be like, throw a dart. I'll go anywhere. I think it's like fun to like move. I think we're all pretty nomadic, but I also really get excited when someone's like excited about a school for a really like specific reason. So when you were applying, I know that essays can sometimes be sort of general, which like lends it to where you can like kind of write about whatever you want. So I'm curious, did any of you write about your experience in the military, and then specifically like as a female veteran, or was it just like pretty general? It doesn't have to be a yes. It's okay if you didn't.
It's all women in the chat right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. so yes, I did. Obviously, maybe not obviously, I don't know how long you guys have been paired with Service to School for, but Service to School does offer the VetLink addendum, which I thought was a fantastic resource, because it was just one more piece of information that I could share about myself, that I could show all of my military experience without having to take up like my Common App essay and write 650 words about like explaining like what I did in the Navy, So I was very grateful that the VetLink addendum did exist and did give me that extra 500-word essay, because, and a little bit about my background, I was picked up as a staff instructor at a very young age in the military. So, I had all these like male role models, and they literally told me either like, you have, and this is a direct quote that I put into my college essay. They were like, you have to be either a bitch or a slut. So that was, and so that was like the kind of like hook that I used for my essay about the military. And then I really was able to show like my personal growth and like realizing, like my value, that I could be valued for who I was, and that, I didn't need to be pigeonholed into just one or the other, which I got in. So I'm not saying I would necessarily recommend that, but I definitely did write about it, and it just, it just shows a facet of your personality.
In prepping for this question, I actually went back and looked at the essay that I wrote for Duke. And I was actually really surprised that I I had like one sentence in there about being a woman in the military, which I was actually really surprised, because I think that it's a really important part of my story, right? And as I've graduated from Duke, and as I've moved forward in my professional career, like I have really strived to be a mentor and a sponsor to other women, like certainly other women in the military. I was reminded on a panel I did on International Women's Day that women are less likely to pull each other along professionally in the ways that perhaps men do, right? So women don't sponsor each other the way that men do, which is for a plethora of reasons. And so I think that now, like I have made it, I've internalized it and made it such like a huge part of my identity, because I do feel such an obligation to kind of help pull other women and, women veterans along. Truly, I had a really great conversation with, ironically, the woman veteran who was a huge part of the reason I went to Duke. I was also kind of like seeking out her guidance with regards to like potential career change. And we had a really great conversation yesterday, and I was so heartened by it. And so I'm kind of sad that I didn't make it more of my essay. But all that was a very long way of saying, I think that it is, for any woman veteran looking to apply to grad school, like it is such a part of your story. And I would hope that you would include it in your essay, or make sure that you give it the credence that it deserves, certainly.
That's absolutely beautiful advice. I did talk about my experiences similar to you, Cara, but I didn't have the benefit of the VetLink addendum. And I was going into a program that didn't have any veterans in it. So I think it is very important to pay due diligence and make sure, like, if you're going to talk about your experience, you're going to talk about it in a way that's accessible. Talk about like how it impacted you, or use words that aren't specific to like military jargon without explaining them. And kind of focus it on the impact either that it had on you or that you're bringing forward, rather than maybe specifically about your job. But that last part is absolutely just my opinion.
Yeah, I did the same thing that you did, Erin. I get asked that a lot from veterans, like, well, what did you write for Yale? So I've looked at my essays a lot, and I didn't harp on like being a woman in the military. And I also like made the mistake twice, because I didn't do it in my law school personal statement either. And I wonder if it's just because like it doesn't feel novel because I did it and it's me and it's my life, and like I'm a woman and I was in the Navy. Like what's exciting about that? I wonder if maybe that's why I didn't do it. But we talk to our partner schools at least once a quarter, if not more often. And they're always saying, how do we get more female veterans to apply? And we have to explain, the military is 20% female, and then they separate, and maybe some of them are officers and they don't need to come to your undergrad institution. And then some part don't want to go to school, or they have a family, or they just start working. And so you whittle away at this 20%. And then you have this small group, and it's like, how do we get all of them to apply to your school? I don't know. But if you are here and you're listening and you feel like maybe like how I felt, like I'm not special, or who cares about my story, or like I was just a woman in the military and so were all these other women. I want you to know that like your story is valuable, and you are very much a commodity to schools, especially schools that are looking to grow their veteran populations. I can promise you that behind closed doors, they are like furiously discussing like, how do we get more women? So if there's a school out there that you want to apply to and you feel like it's such a reach or a dream, I would absolutely encourage you to apply, because you never know what may happen. So what, like either hard or soft, what skills have you found essential for success in school?
I really appreciated the value of hard work that I learned in the military. And I think that applying that work ethic that you developed in your MOS, where you like treat school like a job and you go at it and you're passionate and you actually work until you get done, will set you apart from maybe some of the other younger students who treat it as a game or maybe a pastime. Like bringing that same mission focus to your schoolwork was really, really essential to succeeding.
For me, that was totally, definitely, for sure. I'll echo that 100%. But also, I did so much group work when I was in grad school, so much group work. I feel like I didn't do anything alone for the 2 years I was in grad school. And, when you're in the military, like you're always a part of a unit, right? Like even, when I was in civil affairs, like our team was as small as 4 people. And so you really had to get along because there was no buffer, right? Like if you disliked one person on your team, it was like 25% of your team. So I think just being used to operating on a team in a unit, like being able to navigate those dynamics, and then recognizing the importance of like wanting your teammates to feel like they can rely on you. So like ensuring that you're pulling your weight and, meeting deadlines on time. That was something that paid huge dividends for sure.
Definitely. I think that echoes a little bit on like networking, which obviously isn't crucial necessarily to your academic viability. Obviously, like go like talk to professors, learn about them, pick their brains. But as like a more long-term goal, like applying that like social nature that we have coming from the military and using it in like I don't want to say like extractive way, but in a more directed way, and just the ability to like go up and like have a conversation with somebody is rare is rare to see. So definitely networking. And I touched on it a little bit earlier, like time management obviously is a big key.
And then maybe on the other side of that, what do you feel like were some of the biggest challenges going from the military to school?
So I was enlisted in the military. So when I came out, I was not applying to graduate schools. I was applying to undergrads, which applying to college in the first place is scary. So I would say like my biggest like obstacle I had to overcome was myself. It was myself. It was feeling like that self-doubt, that imposter syndrome, is feeling like, oh, like, why would Harvard want me? Why would Yale? Like, why would all these schools want me? Like, I'm this little old me, like born and raised in Georgia. Like, I felt like I did not have anything to add to the classroom. Not that I thought I would be a burden, but, I just, you have like a mental idea of what these schools would be like and what these classroom experiences would be like. So it was hard for me to overcome the fact that, yes, I do belong there and I would be, a good resource, not only for the college, but also for my classmates. So 100% just getting over self-doubt.
Yeah, I experienced the self-doubt too. And oftentimes when I would interact with people who may not have met like other veterans before, or may not have had a veteran within their family, they had this stereotype of what a veteran would be, and they'd expect you to meet that, whatever it was. So I found it rather challenging to really be confident in presenting my authentic self when there were so many expectations of what I should be that I felt other people were having towards me. I think the solution to that is to just be authentic, though.
My answer is a little less profound. I think for me, the hardest part, honestly, was, it's when you're working, it's very easy to have boundaries for the most part. I mean, the military definitely is a habitual boundary stepper, but I think, in theory, you like wake up in the morning, you go to work, and then you come home at the end of the day and you kind of like leave your leave your work in the office. You know, when you're in school, like there is no end, right? And so it's like you go to class, but then really like you have, you know, 3 hours of work for every like 1 hour that you're in class. And it's for me, it was just never knowing like when to stop, or like it was very difficult for me to kind of like establish boundaries and say, okay, like, you know, I will do schoolwork between like these hours and then I will, you know, put it away for the day. And yeah, I really struggled with that, especially the first semester.
Yeah, for me, it's definitely like a lot of just a lot of what you guys have all touched on. Like, I remember feeling really uncomfortable at school because, like, in the Navy, I knew exactly what was expected of me. I knew exactly what to do. I was good at my job. I'd roll through the quarterdeck, pop a salute, go to my shop, and I was a boss. Like, I was the boss. Like, and then I come to school and I'm like this like small person who feels so dumb in every class she's in. And I just had like a lot of imposter syndrome. And I remember I graduated and then I attended like an orientation event for like new Eli Whitney students at Yale. And mind you, I have a diploma. And this girl, she's like a junior or something. She's like, don't worry, the imposter syndrome goes away. And I was like, when? Because I still got it. Like, I'm afraid they're going to knock and be like, oh, that diploma, we need that back. That was a big mistake. And then I was actually the first female veteran to ever go through the Eli Whitney program at Yale. And they told me that like day one. So there was just a lot of pressure on my shoulders. And I remember I like did an assignment completely wrong in one of the first classes that I did. It was like a close reading exercise. I had never done close reading. So I wrote a research paper and the professor was like, yeah, this is completely wrong. And I just cried. I was so embarrassed, but I felt like I had like the weight of female veterans and their future at Yale on my shoulders. And that took a really long time to go away, for sure. Not my best moment crying in a college classroom as a hardened military veteran.
But I think that's the interesting point about it is, like Lauren said, like people have this stereotype of what you should be as like a female military veteran. And we don't fit that box. You know, we are like happy, outgoing people who like sometimes misunderstand. Like I did the same thing. I had to write a paper. It was about a contemporary moral issue, and like completely misread it, wrote a 100% wrong paper. It was in one of my tutorials. And I didn't realize that the prompt could be taken 2 ways until I got to class, read my paper out loud to my partner and professor. And they looked at it and they're like, huh, this isn't actually what we wanted. We physically put my paper to the side and then continued with our discussion. I was like, okay. So yeah, but like the fact that like we are all here, you know, like you guys don't have to be like the first to do that anymore. Hopefully like we can alleviate some of that burden from your shoulders.
Yeah, hopefully the girl that came after me did not feel as much pressure. Okay, so do you feel like, so you're all ambassadors, so you worked with applicants before. So what do you feel like are some of the biggest misconceptions that you've heard, or some of the like myths that you'd like to bust about applying to college?
We've touched on it a few times, but I get a lot of students who come and they definitely want to go to an Ivy League school, only because it's really prestigious and it sounds awesome. I think it's super important to think about what you want to do or what kind of resources you may like, even if you end up going down a different path, because there's so much, as both Erin and Cara and you, Hillary, have noted, that's more important than just like a name. And you can get a great experience wherever you go to school.
I think it's definitely already come up, but just the depth for women, certainly the imposter syndrome. And just, it's so interesting. Like we don't see ourselves as extraordinary, right? We don't. And I tell people this all the time when they're like looking to write their personal essay for grad school. And definitely this was said to me too. The good friend who helped me with my personal essay was like, you are like a badass, right? Like you've done all these incredible things, like talk about them, like, you know, like, and it's so hard. Like, it's so hard. I remember I was applying for a position with a consulting firm when I was leaving grad school. And the interviewer, like halfway through my interview, he stops me and he's like, stop saying we, like just say I. And I was like, whoa. I mean, I think like one, like as a veteran, like, right, it's never I, right? Like when you're in the military, like it's never I. And then I think as a woman, right, like women, again, like it's almost like a double strike. Like I'm a veteran, so I don't say I, and then I'm a woman, and women don't say I either. Like we talk about things in terms like accomplishments in terms of like our team. So I think, yeah, like I find it's for really tough for veterans, like when they're writing their personal statement, to like want to build themselves up or to see themselves as extraordinary, because they're like, well, I'm not extraordinary because I was just doing what I was told to do. And also like, I was one of just, 40 other people in my platoon, or like however many, like we were all doing the same thing. And so I think I'm constantly having to remind, veteran like applicants to schools, like you are extraordinary, it's like, it's almost like you need a little person on your shoulder, like telling you that all the time.
Yeah, that's 100% what I had to this question also, was that the tendency for like women to downplay themselves, especially when you only have 650 words in that Common App to say like, this is who I am, like this is my like, so what, like this is why you should accept me. Like you do need to make every word count. And it's not like bragging if it's true. And I think that we all, literally just like Erin said, like we all have the tendency to be like, oh, well, there are other people who do this, like it's not as important. I'm just, little old me, but you're not, like, you guys are fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. And then the last question I had was like, what advice would you give to other women veterans? I know we've sort of probably touched on this a lot, and it seems like one of the biggest takeaways is like, believe in yourself and do more than just research the name of the school. But are there any other pieces of advice that you guys would like to extend?
My favorite piece of advice, which was given to me by a veteran at Williams when I was applying, they said, and this touches on the same thing that we've talked about basically all night. They said, carry yourself with the confidence of a mediocre white man. And that just like really struck true with me, because I think there's, both so much and so little to learn from a mediocre white man. But confidence is definitely something that I think we could all like borrow a little bit of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was this great moment one time at lunch. There was a girl in the Eli Whitney program. She's a civilian, but she was having to like negotiate her salary for like a summer job. And she was like, I don't know what to say. Like, I don't want to say my own salary. That feels weird. I wish she wouldn't put this on me. And this guy across the table was like, yeah, just look up whatever the average salary is and then add 20%. And she was like, no, that's way too bold. That's way too this and that. And I was like, Megan, stop. This is a white man telling you how to get more money. And I was like, they do it all the time. Whatever he says, do it, triple it. I don't care. Like, this is why you're not going to get as much as him. Okay, let's see if we have any. If anybody has any questions, you can hit the little raise hand thing and we'll take questions. And if not, we can just end it a little bit early. I want to thank you guys for coming. It was so nice to like hear your perspectives and meet some more ambassadors. And I just want like the attendees and the ambassadors that are here to know that like best fit is something that we talk about all the time. And we don't try to just like push the IVs because we know that it's not the best fit for everybody. Especially if you have a specific major that you're really interested in and it doesn't exist there, then it doesn't make sense for you to go there. So I was really happy to hear that that's sort of like agreed on across the board. And I want to thank everybody for coming and for sharing your stories. And I hope that we have like a big uptick in women veterans applying in the future, because the schools definitely want to see them. All right, I'm going to end it if that's it. Nice to meet you guys. Everybody have a good night.